In the late 1990s, the internet felt like a gold rush. New companies appeared overnight. Money flowed freely, and everyone believed the future belonged to anyone with a website and a dream. At the center of this chaos stood a young company called Amazon. Today, Amazon is a trillion-dollar empire, a company that reshaped shopping, cloud, computing, logistics, entertainment, and even how we think about work. But in the year 2000, Amazon was closer to collapse than success. Very close. So close. In fact, that many experts believed it would not survive the decade. To understand how Amazon almost failed, we need to go back to where it began. In 1994, Jeff Bezos left a comfortable Wall Street job after noticing a simple statistic. Internet usage was growing at 2,300% per year. Bezos didn't start with a grand plan to dominate the world. He started with books. Books were perfect for the early internet millions of titles, easy to ship, and impossible for physical bookstores to stock completely. Amazon launched in 1995 as an online bookstore operating out of a garage. Orders came in faster than expected. Growth exploded. By 1997, Amazon went public. By 1999, it seemed unstoppable. The media crowned Jeff Bezos Time Magazine's Person of the Year. Investors poured billions into the company. Amazon expanded into music, electronics, toys, tools everything. But beneath the surface, Amazon was bleeding money. Every sale costs more than it earned. Warehouses were rushed into existence. Logistics systems broke constantly. Customer growth mattered more than profits. And Wall Street loved eat until suddenly it didn't. In March 2000, the dot-com bubble burst. Internet stocks collapsed. Billions in market value vanished in weeks. Amazon's stock fell more than 90%, from over $100 per share to under $6. Overnight, Amazon was no longer a visionary company. It was a punchline. Analysts mocked it as Amazon.toast. Double quotes. Critics said the business model was fundamentally broken. They argued no company could survive by endlessly losing money. And they weren't wrong on paper. By late 2000, Amazon was burning over $1 billion a year. It had massive debt, thin cash reserves, and investor confidence was gone. Inside the company, fear spread. Employees watched stock options become worthless. Layoffs loomed. Suppliers worried they wouldn't be paid. Rumors circulated that Amazon would run out of cash within months. Jeff Bezos faced a brutal reality. If Amazon didn't change, fast it would die. There would be no second chance. No bailout. No miracle. Just another failed dot-com buried in internet history. And in that moment, Bezos made a decision that would define Amazon forever. He chose survival over popularity, discipline over hype, and long-term thinking over short-term applause. What happened next wasn't flashy. It wasn't exciting, but it saved the company. And it set the foundation for everything Amazon would later become. By late 2000, Amazon was no longer chasing the future. It was fighting for its life. Inside the company, the mood shifted almost overnight. The optimism of the dot-com boom vanished. Every meeting revolved around one question: how long do we have before the money runs out? Cash was everything now. Amazon had built its early growth on a dangerous assumption that capital would always be available, that investors would always fund expansion, that losses were acceptable as long as growth looked impressive. That era was over. Jeff Bezos ordered a complete reset. Projects were frozen. Hiring stopped. Budgets were slashed to the bone. Teams that once competed to expand were now competing to justify their own existence. Warehouses were analyzed line by line. Shipping contracts renegotiated. Every unnecessary expense was questioned. Even desks were shared. But the most painful cuts weren't financial, they were emotional. Thousands of employees were laid off. Talented people who had believed they were building the future suddenly gone. For those who stayed, fear became a constant companion. Stock options that once promised wealth were now nearly worthless. Friends in other .coms were losing jobs or watching their companies disappear entirely. Every morning felt uncertain, and yet Bezos remained unnervingly calm. He didn't pretend things were fine. He didn't offer false optimism. Instead, he repeated a single message: "We will survive." But survival required something Amazon had avoided for years: profitability. For the first time, Amazon had to prove it could actually make money. That meant rethinking its entire business model. The company stopped chasing growth for growth's sake. Instead, it focused on efficiency. Shipping costs were redesigned. Inventory systems were rebuilt. Warehouses became more automated and disciplined. Amazon pushed suppliers harder than ever. Payment terms were extended. Margins were squeezed. It wasn't pretty, but it worked. Slowly, painfully, Amazon's cash burn began to slow. Then came one of the most controversial decisions in the company's history. Amazon introduced third-party sellers. At the time, this idea seemed desperate. Why? Let other companies sell on Amazon's platform, sometimes competing directly with Amazon's own products. Because third-party sellers carried inventory risks that Amazon didn't. They paid fees, they handled their own stock, and Amazon earned money without tying up cash. Wall Street didn't like it. Critics said Amazon was admitting defeat, that it couldn't dominate retail on its own. But Bezos saw something else. A marketplace. A system that could scale infinitely without Amazon owning everything. It was less glamorous, less exciting, but it was sustainable. Then, in 2001, something unexpected happened. Amazon posted its first ever profitable quarter. The profit was small, almost symbolic, but it mattered more than any growth headline ever had. It proved Amazon wasn't a fantasy. It could survive. The stock didn't explode upward. The media didn't suddenly praise Bezos again, but the bleeding stopped. Amazon had made it through the worst storm in internet history. Most .com companies never did. Thousands vanished. Billions were erased. Entire industries collapsed. Amazon endured. Not because it was lucky. Not because it was the biggest, but because it adapted when others refused to. Yet survival was only the beginning, because Bezos wasn't trying to rebuild Amazon into a small, safe company. He was preparing for something much bigger. Something that would once again look crazy. Something that would redefine Amazon forever. By the early 2000s, Amazon had survived the impossible. The dot-com bubble had wiped out nearly everyone else. But Amazon was still standing. Barely. To outsiders, Amazon looked cautious now. More disciplined, less reckless, but inside the company, something unexpected was happening. Jeff Bezos wasn't thinking about the next quarter. He was thinking about the next 20 years. While most companies were focused on repairing damage from the crash, Amazon quietly began building something no one asked for. Something Wall Street didn't understand. Something that didn't even have a name yet. Inside Amazon, engineers faced a constant problem. The company's infrastructure was fragile. Every time traffic spiked, systems broke. Every new feature required rebuilding massive parts of the platform. Amazon's growth had outpaced its technology, so Bezos made a radical decision. He ordered Amazon's internal systems to be completely rebuilt, not for retail, but as independent services. Each team would own a small piece of infrastructure. Each service would communicate through simple interfaces. No exceptions. It was painful, slow, expensive. Many engineers hated it. At a time when Amazon was just recovering, this decision looked irresponsible. Why invest millions into infrastructure that customers would never see? Because Bezos wasn't building for customers alone. He was building for scale. As these internal services matured, something strange became obvious. What Amazon was building wasn't just for Amazon, it was useful to everyone. Startups, developers, entire companies, they all faced the same problem Amazon once had: how to build and scale technology without owning massive data centers. And that's when Bezos made another quiet bet. Amazon would rent its infrastructure to others. In 2006, Amazon launched Amazon Web Services. There was no big announcement, no marketing campaign, no hype. Most people ignored it. At the time, AWS generated almost no revenue. Investors barely mentioned it in earnings calls. Some analysts thought it was a distraction. Others believed it was a mistake. Why would a retail company try to sell computing power? But AWS was something new. Companies could rent servers by the hour, pay only for what they used, scale instantly. No upfront costs. No hardware. No waiting. Slowly, quietly, AWS began to grow. Startups adopted it first. Then larger companies. Then entire industries. Netflix, Airbnb, Uber, Spotify. Many of the modern internet's biggest names were built on Amazon's infrastructure. While competitors focused on retail margins, Amazon was creating something far more powerful: a platform. AWS turned Amazon from a store into the backbone of the internet, and it changed everything. For the first time, Amazon had a business that produced massive profits. Profits that could be reinvested, expanded, multiplied. The same strategy that nearly destroyed Amazon in 2000 long-term thinking over short-term profits was now its greatest weapon. But success brought a new problem. As Amazon grew, so did its power. And with power came scrutiny. Governments noticed. Competitors panicked. Employees questioned the cost. The company that once struggled to survive was now accused of being too big to control. By the late 2000s, Amazon was no longer fighting for survival. It was shaping the future. The retail business, once mocked as unprofitable, had become a machine. Prices were lower than competitors. Shipping was faster. Selection was unmatched. Then came Amazon Prime. At first, the idea sounded irrational. Unlimited, fast shipping for a single annual fee. Analysts called it reckless. Shipping was expensive. Margins were thin. But Prime wasn't designed to make money immediately. It was designed to change behavior. Once customers paid for Prime, they stopped comparing prices. They stopped visiting other stores. Amazon became the default. Prime members spent more, returned more often, stayed longer. What looked like a cost became a moat. At the same time, AWS was quietly becoming Amazon's financial engine. While retail fought for razor-thin margins, cloud computing printed cash. By the mid-2010s, AWS generated the majority of Amazon's operating profit. It funded expansion into new industries without outside help. Logistics networks, streaming services, smart devices, grocery stores. Amazon could afford to lose money in one area because AWS covered the cost. This changed the rules. Competitors couldn't keep up. They had to be profitable everywhere. Amazon didn't. But dominance brought consequences. Governments launched antitrust investigations. Lawmakers questioned Amazon's power over sellers. Labor practices were criticized. Warehouse conditions made headlines. The company that once begged investors for patience was now defending its size. Jeff Bezos stepped down as CEO in 2021, handing control to Andy Yasuda, former head of AWS. It was symbolic. The side project that saved Amazon had become its core. Today, Amazon is worth over $1 trillion. It employs more than 1 million people. It powers much of the internet. It delivers billions of packages a year. But its most important lesson isn't about technology or money. It's about timing. Amazon almost failed because it grew too fast in a world that wasn't ready. It survived because it learned when to slow down. And it became unstoppable because it invested in the future when no one was watching. Most companies chase applause. Amazon chased endurance. And when the world finally caught up, Amazon was already there waiting.